Ole Miss will blast the Georgia Bulldogs in the Sugar Bowl in a rematch. We have the answer key before Thursday's test.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in America. Thank you for that. On today's show, we're going to break down our favorite picks and props for tomorrow's Sugar Bowl showdown between the Ole Miss Rebels and the Georgia Bulldogs and what we like going into kickoff. We'll also highlight some key Rebels, like we always do, who need to step up on New Year's Day to become true difference makers in this matchup. But first, we're going to talk about why Ole Miss can win this game on New Year's Day. When these two teams square off tomorrow, it's going to be a completely different look than it was just a couple of months ago. All of this and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. And a special hello to our insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Ole Miss going to blast Georgia in this game. I'm almost certain of it at this point. Now, don't hear me wrong whenever you're listening to this and you're firing up your comment in the comment sections about, hey, disrespecting the Georgia Bulldogs. This is the most talented team Ole Miss is going to play this season, and that includes Ohio State. Georgia's a really good football team, but they can be had, and they should have been had. That's the important part of all of this, is Ole Miss should have won the first time they met in Sanford Stadium. They were a missed 4th and 2 away from winning that game. Now, the fourth quarter, it got sideways on Ole Miss, and I'm not saying anything about that in a negative way. But Trinadiot Chambliss just spiked the ball into the ground a couple of times. That is how Georgia got possession, and Ole Miss's defense could not get off the field. That was the story of that fourth quarter. That was the story of the game for the Georgia Bulldogs. I don't think you're going to see a defense have a similar type result this time around, because this isn't a situation to where Ole Miss just has a bad defense. And Wesley McGriff isn't running out there calling plays at the moment. This defense is a good unit, top 25 in the country in scoring defense. They've been better as the season's gone on. To put this in perspective, going into the Georgia game, the first time, Ole Miss had 5 sacks through 6 games, or whatever that amount was, 5 sacks. After the Georgia game and the 6 games after that or so, Ole Miss has 20 sacks. That tells you a little bit of a commitment to a different style of calling the game, less emphasis on the drop 8 coverage, which Georgia completely just chewed Ole Miss up and spit it out in drop 8 coverage or in the first matchup. But Pete Golding deciding to go around that made this unit work, and they got better and better and better. And by the end of the year, they were a pretty good unit indeed. So it will be interesting to see, but this is why I think Ole Miss will win the game. Ole Miss is the team with the most to prove in this Sugar Bowl. For whatever reason, when anybody talks about this game, they just simply talk about the fourth quarter and use that data point for the entirety of this matchup. They assume that the fourth quarter of that game is going to be the full game in the Sugar Bowl. That is not the case. You have an Ole Miss defense with something to prove. You have Trinadiot Chambliss with something to prove, because 90,000 fans at Sanford Stadium kind of rattled the young quarterback. That was his first road start. He spiked a couple of balls, like we said, in the fourth quarter that allowed Georgia to get on the field and stay on the field, and that's how the Bulldogs were ultimately able to win that game. Ole Miss is the team with the lot to prove. They're going to this game with a why not us attitude. And there's a looseness to this team. There's no pressure on these guys. Now, you put that on the flip side of it. If this is a close ball game, all of the pressure is going to be on the Georgia Bulldogs. Everything. Georgia is supposed to win this game. They're 6.5-point favorites, according to FanDuel. Georgia is going to feel all the pressure of this game as a tight game goes on. Now, second, Ole Miss has the advantage at inside receiver against the Georgia linebackers, and that is the matchup they will exploit. And it's not necessarily the Winston Watkins or Caden Lee, because that's great. That's a good way to look at this wide receiver unit, but it's Daquan Wright. It's Luke Haas. It is the tight end position that are going to be very effective against the Georgia Bulldogs. And the important part about this, and we've talked about it a couple of times, Georgia has to spy Trinadiot Chambliss, which means one of the linebackers in their system is going to be occupied on each and every snap. That is going to provide a little bit of cover for whichever slot receiver can take advantage of the middle of the field. Most of the time in the first matchup, it was Daquan Wright. We will see if it's Caden Lee. We'll see if it's Caleb Odom. We'll see in the middle of the field who Ole Miss likes in the matchup to exploit. I do think Caleb Odom, if he's healthy in this game, could have an important big game because he's a matchup problem. 6'5", 220 pounds, and can absolutely run. We'll see how that looks for him. Now, third, this game, unlike the game at Stanford Stadium where it was 95% Georgia fans, is going to be probably in the realm of 60-40 Ole Miss fans. So all the intangibles in this game are on the Ole Miss side. Everything. Even to the point where, hey, if you want to look at who America's rooting for, they're rooting for Ole Miss. If you are not in Louisiana, if you are not in Georgia, you are rooting for Ole Miss in this game. Everybody wants Ole Miss to win this game. They want Ole Miss to be the team of destiny. If Ole Miss wins this game, you're probably going to start to hear that, even with potentially Ohio State coming up in the next round. Ole Miss has a chance to continue this run and gain serious momentum. We always talk about the need to keep momentum. Ole Miss is going to have the chance to gain that momentum and increase it a little bit more. There's 3 games left for Ole Miss to win. They need to beat Georgia, then they need to beat the winner of Miami and Ohio State, and then they need to beat whoever wins the other bracket. That is the path for Ole Miss. This is likely the toughest game that Ole Miss will play out of their last 3. This will be the game that you need to pay attention to. Georgia, talent profile, absolutely off the charts. This is an unbelievably talented team. Just 5 stars, absolutely everywhere. It's Georgia. It's the gold standard of football right now. But this gold standard should have gotten beat in Sanford Stadium, which means that Ole Miss not only can win, maybe they should win. I don't know exactly how that looks, but Trinadiot Chambliss didn't have the best game the first time out. Now, he's 241 for 362. He's thrown for 3,298 yards, 19 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. The guy's just balled. He did not even play the first 2 games of the season. So he didn't have the Georgia State game to stat pad. He didn't have the Kentucky game before you figured out exactly what this offense would be with Trinadiot Chambliss. Heck, you didn't necessarily figure out what this offense could be with Trinadiot Chambliss against Georgia the first time you played. Georgia's going to see a different offense. So we'll see how that looks. Kewan Lacy, all of the weapons that Ole Miss has offensively needs to be good, effective weapons against the Georgia Bulldogs. Of course, they're going to do things to take them away as well, but the weapons are there. The defense, this is going to be a weakness on weakness game. Ole Miss's defense, Georgia's offense is likely going to decide this football game. I don't think it's going to be a strength on strength game to where Ole Miss's offense and Georgia's defense is going to tell the tale. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But Ole Miss will, I don't know, beat the Georgia Bulldogs in the Sugar Bowl tomorrow night. So stay tuned for that. It should be pretty interesting. You know, we said before the season started, this Ole Miss team would go as far as the front seven would take them. And this matchup is going to require that front seven to be their absolute very best. We will talk about all of that next. Fridays feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Even every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel is giving away fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during happy hour always brings something new, boost, bonuses, surprises. It's easy to check out the new weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect, right before the games, right before the weekend starts. It adds that little bit of extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check out the FanDuel app and see what is dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern Time. A little basketball, a little action, a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on this video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcast you're listening to and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but keeps all of this free. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports network, period. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Ole Miss with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more for just $5 a month or $50 per year. Go to lockedonolemiss.supercast.com or check the link down in the show notes to learn more. We also have basketball stuff and football stuff. Dalen Flowers from Oxford, Mississippi is on the all-access flavor of the Everydayer Club. Corey Burton, who you're going to hear about from a good bit as well, does all the coaching stuff on there. Mike Huseman does the transfer portal and coaching searches and all of that good stuff. So we'll see exactly how that goes as well. All right. So there's a couple of players that you need to pay attention to. A couple of the players that you're probably used to seeing, but the defensive player seems to be the one that is changing as this run progresses for Ole Miss football. And one thing that is interesting, I think Trinadiot Chambliss does need to have the big game, because in the fourth quarter, he did not have the big game. You look at the one game that Ole Miss has played all season against a team that is more talented than they are. Trinadiot Chambliss in the fourth quarter kind of wilted a little bit under the pressure of the crowd and all of that. Now, it's nothing to say against Trinidad. That was his first start in one of those type environments, but that's what happened. This is a chance for Trinidad to kind of make that right, to get that where we think it needs to be. And in the Sugar Bowl, it's not going to be 95% Georgia fans. It's not going to be a situation to where if a 4th and 2 happens and Georgia gets a first down, that place gets juiced and all of a sudden Trinidad kind of wilts a little bit. I don't think that is going to happen, because I believe it's going to be 60-40 Ole Miss in that building because of everybody. What's the running joke? The largest 3 cities in Mississippi, Mobile, New Orleans, and Memphis. That's going to happen in this game. Ole Miss fans love going to New Orleans, and they absolutely will travel down there in numbers. Now, Kewan Lacy, that's going to be a big thing to pay attention to. Kewan Lacy injured himself against Tulane. Now, it was after the game gotten out of hand, so we don't know the extent of where he is injured. But Kewan Lacy, if he is remotely healthy, Ole Miss is going to be in a really good spot. Now, Logan Diggs played pretty well. He started to get lathered up and got in a rhythm a little bit against Tulane. But against Georgia is a different animal than Tulane. You're not going to beat Georgia 41-10, I don't think. But you want Kewan Lacy to be as close to 100% as he can get. And coaches always talk about nobody is 100% at this moment. If you go this length of time, you're not at 100%. Now, the defensive player that I'm paying attention to is Will Echols. Will Echols, in my opinion, is going to have a Walter Nolan type year in 2026 for the Ole Miss Rebels. He's already starting to trend that way now. He is becoming a dominant force on the defensive line. Now, he was good against Georgia when they met back in October. He's a different animal now. And with Ole Miss calling the game in a more aggressive way, Will Echols is one of the beneficiaries of that. Let me explain. We always talk about the secret sauce of Alabama and Georgia and how they are so dominant defensively. And basically what they do is they find interior defensive linemen that require double teams to allow their elite pass rushers to pass rush. That's the secret sauce. That is what Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart want to do. If you can make a double team happen on the interior defensive line, you're going to have edge players, which are absolutely elite, one-on-ones against battles they can win to get to the quarterback in a hurry. No real secret sauce there, but that's what they do. When Ole Miss, after the Georgia game, started going more even fronts and rushing four, all of a sudden Suntarine Perkins and Prince Will Amamielin, they woke up on the outside and started to be people that you need to pay attention to. Will Echols has been the beneficiary of doing the reverse of what Georgia does and having to win single battles as much as they can to get to the quarterback. Now, as Will becomes a game wrecker, because Will Echols is absolutely becoming a game wrecker right now, him and Xavion Harris patrolling the middle of the field, this defense is going to become exponentially better. You're going to see Prince Will, who's turning into his brother. You just see Princely out there running around trying to get to the quarterback. You can see Prince Will kind of getting that direction. Suntarine, everybody knows what he can do, and he can be an absolutely dominant player. But Will Echols in this game, especially when you look at the Georgia run game being the 100% key to this football game. Listen, if Ole Miss stops Georgia's run to the neighborhood of 150 yards, that's all they have to do. 150 yards or less, Ole Miss is going to win the game. If Georgia gets to over 150 yards, I think Georgia is going to win the game. So it's going to come down, can Ole Miss stop the run? That is in the category of Will Echols. If Ole Miss can bottle up that running game and does not allow the Georgia Bulldogs to go 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, 1st and 10, 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, 1st and 10, this Ole Miss football team is going to be pretty good and is going to be extremely hard to beat. It'll be interesting to see how that happens as well. In our final segment, we give our picks for the game and props we like heading into the Sugar Bowl between the Ole Miss Rebels and the Georgia Bulldogs. So stick around. There's nothing like college football season, tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all. The energy of the bands, the moments you remember absolutely forever, and actually getting tickets, well, that part used to be the frustrating part with queues and long lines and logins and prices that jump at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experience in just a few taps. I opened the Game Time app to look at the upcoming college football games and the Sugar Bowl, actually, for Ole Miss, and I was just surprised at how easy it was to find great seats. The app is incredibly easy to use. I went from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes, and I took the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, so looking at this game, There's a couple of picks and props that I have been looking at. And if you look at the main line, according to FanDuel Sportsbook, Georgia's currently a 6.5 point favorite. The under, however you want to say it, is 55.5. Pretty stable line. There's been 2 lines this week that has moved at all, even a little bit. One of the games is this one because Georgia started off at around 7.5 and has come down a little bit. And we're at the point now where it probably could come down a little bit more. So we'll see how that goes. The other game is the Oregon-Texas Tech game, where Oregon has gone from a 1.5 point favorite to a 2.5 point favorite. Other than that, incredibly stable lines. And this is a game that, like I said, if you read the title of this thing, I think Ole Miss is going to win this game. The score of this game, I'm predicting Ole Miss 27, Georgia 21. It's going to be a tight game. It's going to be a cagey game. It's going to be an absolute battle, as you would expect from every team that's in the college football playoff quarterfinals. But Ole Miss comes out victorious, and they will face the winner of Miami and Ohio State in the next round, in my opinion. Some of the props that kind of have my attention, I think Kewan Lacy, 2 touchdowns in the game, either receiving or running the ball, is something you need to pay attention to. I think Trinadiot Chambliss going over 300 yards. I think the goal in this game for Georgia, they're going to walk up and trying to press the outside wide receivers. Is going to be imperative on the Ole Miss inside wide receivers to get open. Ole Miss does a lot of switch releasing and things like that. That's not necessarily important. The important thing that everybody needs to know about is Ole Miss is going to attack the middle of the field, and they're going to attack the linebackers, and to the point where you try to help out on those guys, and then they get the one-on-ones on the outside, and you get a Deshaun Stribling or a Trey Wallace or Deuce Alexander running down the sideline free. I think that's the goal. Kewan Lacy just needs to run the ball enough to basically make Georgia respect it. If you get to 120 yards, that's probably a good day. And this Ole Miss team with Trinadiot Chambliss, with Kewan Lacy, Logan Diggs, Damian Taylor, those guys, they can absolutely hit that number. I think with the defense playing better, I do expect the defense to play completely lights out. I expect this to be one of the better performances defensively that Ole Miss has had over the course of the season. And remember that there's a weird dichotomy that is going on right now. Kirby Smart against Ole Miss is 2-0 in Sanford Stadium. Kirby Smart against Ole Miss is 0-2 away from Sanford Stadium. And this will be the 3rd different head coach of Ole Miss that Kirby Smart has faced. And if Pete Golding wins the game, that will be 3 different coaches that won games away from Sanford Stadium. Just something to pay attention to about that. I like holding Georgia south of 150 yards. I like keeping Nate Frazier less than 100 yards. Antonio Kite or Jalen Braxton, I think, are going to be difference makers for Ole Miss in the secondary. We'll have to see where Wyatt Williams is because he came out of the Tulane game. He is probably Ole Miss's best safety. So there's some questions I'm interested about. I'm sure that tomorrow is going to bring a ton of anxiety for me. We are going to have a pregame show at 5 o'clock Central Time, 30 minutes roughly, talking about the game, kind of getting primed to go. And then immediately after the game, or maybe not immediately, a couple minutes after the game, we'll do a post-game show for about a half hour as well going on. And hopefully we're getting ready at that point for a game against the Ohio State Buckeyes in about 8, 9, 10 days as well. So we will see how it goes. But this is, every game that Ole Miss wins, the next game becomes the biggest game in the history of Ole Miss. Everyone. And that's gone on since, heck, Florida or South Carolina, because Ole Miss getting to the playoffs was such a big deal. And I'm excited to see what happens in this game. I do think you're going to see a locked-in defensive performance in the game. I think the front seven is going to play very well. I think Georgia is going to have screens and things that they can use to affect over pursuit because Ole Miss is going to be so jacked up. So we'll see exactly how that goes. So thanks for tuning in today to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We'll continue to talk about Ole Miss and Georgia all the way through the game and into the post game. So make sure you subscribe and follow so you don't miss a video that gets released. We're on all the social media channels, so check that out as well. And also, did a Locked On Ole Miss make your Spotify Wrap proven on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club? Just tag our Locked On national account on any social media platform and we'll drop you the code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. And for those of you on video, we're going to send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you check out a second listen, either Locked On College Football or Locked On SEC. Those are pretty nice. And hotty toddy, everybody, we are about 24 hours away from an unbelievable day. Hotty toddy, everybody.